In my experience, ambiguity is one of the most expensive issues to overcome. And it's particularly frustrating because if the parties are clear about their expectations and demands, it should not be difficult to set out a specific set of rules and procedures for dealing with issues when they arise. But oftentimes in the terms of an agreement or in the communications between the parties, it's not clear what the expectations, the scope, or how parties plan to deal with an issue when it does arise. And that is oftentimes a source for substantial disputes and sometimes litigation that can get very costly and blow up the deal altogether or eliminate the profits that the parties expected to make. I think that ambiguity tends to arise from three primary sources. First, the parties are trying to gain a competitive advantage over one another. They want to preserve their options so that when an issue arises, they have all the different options at their disposal. Another common one is fear. Whether it's the owner or the contractor, they're scared that if they raise the elephant in the room or if they try to get into the difficult topics, that they might lose the bid or they might scare off the contractor. And third is people just don't do their homework. There is, on both ends of the spectrum, I see it with very experienced contractors, developers, and attorneys, and also inexperienced ones on the other end of the spectrum. There's this belief that we've done this 100 times before and they just gloss over issues. And on the inexperienced side, they don't know necessarily what to look for. So they just ignore the issue altogether and they don't do the proper diligence in investigating what's going to come, what's in the horizon, and how we're going to plan to deal with it. And this is an error that I think it's not too difficult to fix. Parties should be investing time in communicating, laying out their biggest concerns and the priorities and expectations for a project, whether timely payments, timely completion. Every particular project has different issues, and understanding what those priorities are and understanding the obstacles that are going to get in the way of those priorities, and then that's the first step. And then the next step right after that is disclosing that to the other side and coming up with a set of rules to deal with it. And it's important that it's not just in the contract. Sometimes lawyers do a fantastic job of handing over a very detailed contract, but the project goes on for a year, and during that year, there's incredible amount of communications between the project manager, the owner, the engineer, and in those communications, there's miscommunication or misrepresentations, whether intentional or not, as to what's going to be done and when it's going to be done. And by the time it circles back to the lawyer, because a dispute has arisen, it's too late to decipher what was actually agreed to through all those communications. So this is particularly important when there's a lot of oral communications, right? People are on site, they agree to fix a particular issue, and it sounds brilliant in the moment, but nobody realizes that that's not what the agreement called for, and that's not what was written down. And so now fast forward, you're at the end, and that oral communication hasn't been documented anywhere. So it's important to follow up throughout the course of a project. If there's an agreement as to how to deal with things, just send a quick email and document that. And if it's going to be a substantial change, make sure you raise it with the higher ups, maybe get your lawyer involved, and make sure that there's a plan or that there's a procedure in place for making sure that that's incorporated into the terms that everyone's agreed to.